Welcome to IMC Live, everybody. Like Alan said, this is our interactive webinar series hosted by the Industrial Marketing Collective, and we are here to help you connect with your peers, sharpen your skills, and drive results in your work. I'm Peyton Warren, Marketing Director at Gorilla 76, the industrial marketing agency, and I have the absolute pleasure of being one of your IMC Live hosts today. So, a quick thought to frame today's conversation. What we're going to be talking about was not originally built as a marketing initiative, but it has become one of the most powerful marketing assets that I've personally been able to see in a very long time. And I'm just super happy to have like such a clear example within the industrial sector to share with you guys. If you've been around IMC Live this past year, this example is not necessarily new to you because I've brought it up several times just in random conversations that we've had because it's been super relevant. But you've probably heard me mention Julie Runez and the Lehnen Lab more than one time. So today, we finally get to have Julie on the show and we get to dig in with her. So we're so excited to do that. What Lehnen built started as a way to really just help their customers de-risk big, complex automation decisions. And we'll learn a little bit more about what I mean by that and what they mean by that here in just a second. But um, this is like the sort of thing that I think we're all very familiar with. They're the sort of conversations that are very hard to move forward over Zoom, lots of stakeholders involved, and the like. But it really has evolved into something that is just so much bigger. It has become a physical space and also a community that builds trust faster. It has created better conversations for Lehnen and the folks within that community. It has unlocked new opportunities for content and pipeline for the company. So the community piece, is incredibly important. We all know how powerful that can be. You are part of the Industrial Marketing Collective yourself. Um, but a lot of times it feels like it's such a reach to be able to actually execute this idea inside like the industrial sector, right? And a question that I hear a lot is, you guys do something like this for Gorilla, but how do I actually do this for my own business? And that's exactly what Julie tackled. So I'm really, really excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us today, Julie. You mind saying hello and telling us just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I've been working with Lehnen Industrial Services since actually COVID, like April 2020 is when I came on. And since then, we have changed so much. We were in a very small building with like I think I was the 12th hire at that point. And now we've got 24 people and we're in a building that's three times the size and we are doing twice the revenue annually. And it's been a great road. And this lab has kind of been the most recent thing that we've been doing to try and expand and grow.
Yeah, and it's definitely an exciting piece. I love hearing about it on social media, but that's some insane growth. I'm sure like the company has experienced just, I mean, I guess a quick question about that. Like, how has like the culture been as the company has grown so fast? As I think a lot of industrial companies would love to see that kind of growth, but then, there's also the internal.
Yeah, it's a hard part of that for sure. And one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is culture. Our boss is one of the kindest individuals I know, and he runs his company that way. He really tries to keep an open door policy. We definitely have a no a-holes policy. It's one of our hiring guidelines. And so regardless of the best laid plans there, right? As you grow, it's not just about keeping kindness and service at the heart of what you're doing. It's also about keeping or developing really systems and implementation and adoption that keeps everything moving forward. Because as soon as those, it's really easy when you've got 5 or 10 people in a building to keep communication really current and present. And when you start growing that and you start dividing into compartmentalized teams, your systems become so important, because no matter how good your people are, if your systems fail, there's going to be issues with blame and pointing fingers. And that's where, it's really easy to say, hire the right people and you'll have good culture. Hire the right people and have good systems, and your culture can survive that growth.
Yeah, support those people with the good systems so that they can do their best and have like just a healthy balance in their work. That's awesome. Well, let's start at the beginning, shall we? Because, this is something that, isn't something that most manufacturers will just wake up and decide to build, even though they might be like kind of dreaming about it a little bit. What was happening at Lehnen Industrial Services in your sales process with your customers that made you and I believe your CEO, his name's Peter, right?
Yes,
Peter,
Peter.
what made y'all like start discussing this and decide like, okay, something like this needs to exist for us?
So this was actually probably going to be totally backwards compared to everybody else's experience, but I'm the one who needed to be convinced. My boss, the owner of the company, Peter, has been saying for years, I want to have a lab. I want to have a space where our customers can come in and experiment and do proof of concept, and all that were talking about was resources for our customer that we're not going to charge them for. And it was constantly just in the back of my mind, how do we do this without it just being nothing but a drain on resources? And so the piece that I brought to it was, how can we take this space and this investment and still be able to consider it a win, even if nobody ever comes through the door and uses it as a proof of concept lab, because there's no guarantee that that's going to happen, right? So what we decided that we wanted to do was then bring in partner companies who are going to, help us supply that lab, help us promote the lab, because it's now their shared space as well. And we're going to use it to educate our community about automation, keep them up to date on the newest components that are out there from our partner companies, educate them on technical aspects. I don't know if Emily is in here today or not. I didn't see her name pop up, but Emily Ting from CCSA, they came up and they did a fantastic full day training on technical lighting for vision systems. That's the kind of education that we want to bring to our community here. And when those people come through the door for these events, for these trainings, for these demonstrations, they're seeing us, they're seeing our building, they're seeing what we do. We do a guided tour for anybody who's interested in it after the event is over. And so they see the kind of machines that we're working on. They see what capabilities we have. They see our machine shop. They see our assembly team. And so it's really just win, 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 win for everybody who comes through the building. And that's really our goal, is to be always adding value for anybody who comes through the door, whether that be our partners, a potential customer, or a student or an educator. We just want everybody to come here and feel like they got value.
Yeah, it seems like everyone is trying to de-risk what they're trying to do. So could you talk a bit more about how the lab functions in that way and how important that is, especially for your potential customers?
Yeah, so for us, for those of you who don't know, we're an engineering firm. We design and build custom manufacturing equipment. This is high dollar CapEx equipment in high stakes industries like like currency, like um, life science and med tech, where the investment is going to be huge, and whoever makes that decision is really essentially putting their job on the line. They're saying, I am telling my company we should spend several $1 million on this project, And if it goes badly, it's going to go badly for me. And so trust in that process and trust in us is really important. And it's not an easy thing to do to go to a purchasing committee and say, this is what we need. This is how much money it's going to cost us. This is the company that we'd like to work with, but this is a brand new system. There's no guarantee that we know how it's going to turn out. There's no guarantee that they're going to be able to solve this problem. And so what this lab space allows them to do is to come in and say, okay, we've done a million automation projects before. These parts of this process seem pretty straightforward. This part right here is going to be the crux of it. That's going to be the part that is going to be new and experimental. We can take that small part, bring it into the lab, and work on that until we can prove that we can solve that problem. And then at that point, whichever person at that company is backing this project can bring it to their purchasing committee and say, here's what we've got. We have this proof of concept. We have this amount of research that's gone into this part of this process. And we've spent $0 on it so far.
Yeah. And that question actually just came in the chat about, okay, like the financials of this, because like obviously these are multi-million-dollar projects that you guys are working on. These are all custom projects you're working on specific for a very, very specific high stakes use case. So like, yeah, and maybe this kind of gets at just like, okay, let's talk about this a little bit more in practice. Like, so how does this cost them something? Like who's footing the bill for this? How does the lab solve that?
So we call the lab our $0 zone. And that's kind of really how it works. And it's possible because of the partner companies that we have in there. We've got Azeril in there. We have CCSA. We have Beckhoff and SMC, Keyence. These companies have all made their they first of all of them have sample products in the lab right now that are available for use and experimentation at the drop of a hat. Beyond that, they've all also agreed to make their entire catalogs available upon request for use in the lab. And so everything that they have in there, they've retained ownership of. We haven't purchased anything. They haven't paid us to have a space in there. It's all collaborative. It's all cooperative. They bring their stuff in. We use it. It gets in front of our customers. Sometimes they get called in for consultation when customers are trying to spec out their components for a new project. It's just something where when you remove the whole exchange of currency in that space, collaboration just goes through the roof. We had a demonstration here where we had Azeril with their parts feeder, IGUS with one of their robots, and Keyence with their PLC and vision system, where we were able to demonstrate a complete end-to-end parts handling and inspection system. And none of those companies would have been able to demonstrate how their components work in that system alone. But how often do you see them walking into a customer facility side by side to be able to demonstrate those things together? They're trying to demonstrate their products in a vacuum that is not viable in the real world. None of our partner companies and us, nobody can complete an end-to-end system without being able to interact and work well with other companies, other components. And when you remove the competition, everybody's able to come in and collaborate, and it's a no pressure situation for the customers and for our partners.
Aaron had a question in the chat to maybe add a finer point to some of this. Aaron, you wanna hop on and ask yourself?
Sure. I've never worked with a company that has a lab situation like you do, but something I think that's similar is like any sort of custom engineering that's done in the sales process. And one objection or issue I've heard of before is like, oh, we did all this great engineering and they loved it, but then they shopped it out to somebody else and found it at a lower price. Is that something you experience in the lab too? Or like, what would you say to that issue when it comes up?
So we don't really worry about it. And whether or not we should, whether or not that's something that we're going to be losing business to, remains to be seen. But really, we are trying to keep service and value at the core of what we're doing. We're trying to bring more value to our potential customers in this situation than we are potentially bringing to ourselves in with the understanding that when you develop strong relationships and when you act in service and in good faith, that those things grow goodwill, they grow a good reputation. And if we lose a deal here and there on lower price, it's not going to really deter us. It's not going to hurt us. We're not, I can say right out of the box, we're not always going to be the lowest priced option because of the custom nature of what we're doing. So if somebody comes in here thinking that they need a fully custom system, and through the course of their R&D and their experimentation in the lab, determine that they can achieve what they need by bolting together commercially available parts, good for them. That's great. We don't want them to waste their money on us because we don't want them to look back on that experience and think that they shouldn't have done it.
Mm. It makes me think about like the whole argument around gating content and not gating content, like to put it
We
in
don't get content.
yeah, and I mean, and I feel so strongly about that too. Like, I think there are times when, like, okay, you have a specific campaign and you're trying to do like a lead gen effort, right? Okay,
Mhm.
got it. But just like as like a baseline or as like a default, it's like when you open up the door to just everything, and you just share what you know and you share it openly and transparently, your customers really appreciate that. And it gives them, especially with the way that folks like to buy these days, it gives them more to chew on while they're in those early, like when they're higher up in the funnel.
Mhm.
And they can take their time, as much time as they need, but then they're still building trust with you because they're using your resources. In
Mhm.
this case, they're using the lab, or they're using a blog post you wrote, or whatever. It's just, to me, it's like one of those things where it's like if you're going to make one big change um with like your content strategy, that would be it. Is like just ungate your stuff. um
Yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely. And that's, we're a service industry. Yes, we're building machines, but we are doing it as a service. And to me personally, being of service doesn't just mean being of service where it gets you an immediate return. Because when you have established yourself as a trustworthy and collaborative and open partner, that comes back to you. It might not come back to you immediately, but it will come back to you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of how it's coming back to you, how do you feel like this has accelerated your all sales process with those that, have kind of gotten on the line from this?
Well, actually, we just got an email yesterday from a new client from a company that we've never done business with. And while he did not say in his email specifically that he looked at, the lab or noticed what we did in the lab, he specifically mentioned, we have this process that we need to automate. It's fully manual right now, and we need to do some R&D. We have a lab space here, but it is overwhelmed and can't get to this. And we are going to be using an Azrael parts feeder, which we have in our lab, but we can't send our parts out for testing because of confidentiality. So they can't send, it's great that Azrael offers to test anybody's parts that they want to send them. That's fantastic. But if your parts are in development and you can't have them out there and you want to be able to do that testing by yourself in a space where those components are available, that's what we're here for. So while that person didn't specifically say, hey, I see you have a lab with an Azrael parts feeder in it, I strongly suspect that maybe he noticed it.
Yeah, it sounds like he smelled the bait.
Yeah, for sure. And so that's the kind of thing that we're doing is we're keeping our content and our events in the lab relevant to the companies that we want to have come in here, and hopefully they're going to see the value in those events and in our content there, and then self-qualify themselves to come in and use the lab, or to recognize that, we are doing the kinds of things that they need. And a lot of this sounds just like put it out there and trust. And there's no we don't have a ticker on our G4 analytics for this, and a lot of it is put it out there and trust. But we are seeing the same people coming through the lab. And then maybe they come through, for a couple of trainings and then a professional development, and then a need arises at their company and we're their first phone call. So it's the slow play for sure, but we're in an industry where our sales cycles are, easily 18 months. We have one machine, we have one project that we did eventually get a purchase order for, where our sales cycle was close to a decade. So, it's long and slow, and we get that. And so we're able to play the long game.
Yeah, real quick question from the chat to clarify things. What percentage of your customers are local, regional, national, international, so on? And how do you scale the in-person lab to a larger audience?
That's a great question.
So it's a big question too. Yeah.
Yes. So our lab obviously is intended for in-person foot traffic. So we suspect that the lab itself will be most valuable to people who are within a 2 to 2.5 hour drive radius of us. That for us is perfect because we are within that distance from the Boston Bio Hub, which is the hotbed for our ideal customer profile. Essentially, like, we want all of those life science companies there within an easy drive to our lab. We do have people who will fly in to do specific testing in the lab. For instance, we have a company that we've worked with out in Utah. They want to fly in and see a demo of our tube cutter with their tubing. So, they're eventually planning that trip once we have all of the tooling ready for them, right? So, so for the most part, foot traffic here is local. Our business is global. We've shipped machines to Australia, we've shipped to India, we've shipped to China, we've shipped to Ireland. So most of that business has come from getting in with companies in that Boston Biohub, and then it's their satellite facilities that we're shipping to. No matter where you are in the world, if you are in life sciences, you probably have a foot in Boston.
Can you give folks just a little bit more context too on this, what's a good year for Lehnen Industrial Services? Like, how many customers are you guys trying to land, and just kind of like the scale there? Because I think that's also some really nice context.
It's super relevant to our strategy, because this wouldn't work if we needed high volume. So we, like I said, we're small. We only have 24 people. And in order for us to not blow our capacity, we have to keep it to probably, I would say, between 5 and 10 major projects a year, and then smaller ones throughout. So we need to have a good variety of customers. We definitely have a few companies that are pretty consistent customers that give us a good deal of our business. But, there's ebb and flow in every industry and within each individual company. We always are looking for new customers and new companies to be working with, new projects. But we also don't need a dozen new customers a year. If we get 2 or 3 new customers or companies that we're working with a year that could potentially be repeat customers, we're growing.
We had a couple good questions in the chat here I wanted to bring up real quick. First one, how often do you have things going on in the lab? And then the second one, maybe take a little bit longer to answer this one. The 10-year buying cycle is pretty long. So how do you make sure you don't lose contact when there are turnovers on the customer side, especially?
Yeah, and
So,
just to clarify on that question specifically, I mean, like on the long buying cycle, I mean, I feel like this kind of goes into a little bit of what you've been sharing too, like about like just the brand feeling and like the familiarity. But yeah, I am curious, like what you guys have in place in terms of nurture and just relationship building.
um, I'll answer the short, easier question first. So we try to have an event in the lab at least once a month. Um, Sometimes they get kind of bunched up and we have a couple in one month, and then we have a month or two that doesn't have anything. But we're aiming for roughly one event a month, and then we're aiming to ramp that up as it's appropriate and as it organically gains momentum, which it is starting to do, which is great. We have several events that are coming up right now that I'll talk about a little bit later because I don't want to forget the context of the other question first. So the other question is the life cycles or the life cycle of these projects. We have a Kelly. That is exactly what we have. We have one person who is really, really good at her job, and she through those long cycles is not only staying in contact with the person who's promoting those projects, but you're right, in a life cycle, in a buy cycle like that, you literally have people retire and somebody take their place in the middle of that stream. And Kelly keeps up with who's retiring. Well, who's replacing you? I'm going to talk to that person. Let's invite that person to the lab. Like she does more than I can even think about doing. And that it makes my brain hurt to understand how much she is keeping her finger on how many pulses.
Yeah. I can only imagine everything that's running through her inbox. That's pretty incredible. So we started talking a little bit about the types of events that you're having. But one piece of this has been that it's become a bit of it's become a piece of your marketing engine.
Mm-hmm.
And you are able to like lean on it for content creation. Can you just tell us a little bit more, like how has this lab, its existence, altered your content strategy in any way, and what sort of stuff are you able to make out of it?
Yeah, so really the lab, because of the initial investment involved in this, like we literally built a 1,600 square foot space out in our new facility and outfitted it with tools and benches and all of what you would need to come in and do your stuff. So because of that initial investment, we really looked at that as our marketing budget for that year. That's this became the
And this was a
cornerstone.
pivot for you guys.
This was a big pivot for
Yeah.
us. It really was because, I mean, for all of the reasons that we've talked about so far, because of the stakeholders involved and the stakes and the price tag and the sales cycle, typical Google ads don't really work for us. Nobody's going to Google us and look at our website and be like, hey, I found our vendor.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. We need to build a lot of trust before we move forward with somebody who doesn't know us. And so the only way that we can do that there's a few ways. One, a personal recommendation. Two, somebody who has done work with us in the past moves to a new company and speaks our name in that new boardroom. Three, somebody walks in here, meets us face to face, and builds trust with us in person. And the only one of those things that we have any real control over is the third. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a situation available where people could come in and we could start to earn their trust. Um, so, I mean, obviously part of that is, you know, being searchable and for people to be able to find us online if that's how they're doing it. But that's not going to be the end of the sales cycle. There's only very limited self-qualification that anybody could do from our website. And it's going to have to go to a conversation and probably an in-person meeting from there before anything is going to start grinding. So this lab has given us a lot of validity and a lot of authority in the eyes of people who don't know anything about us in our past and what we've done in the past. And a big part of that too is that we can't always talk about the projects that we're doing. We can't always talk about the problems that we've solved. You know, every single project that comes through here comes with a big old NDA attached to it. And you know, we work for companies who are in competition with each other sometimes. So it's really important that we are respectful of that and that we don't break trust in that area, you know? So, so yeah, that's really what we wanted to do, was to put our marketing dollars into doing anything that we possibly could to build trust. And so when we do anything in the lab, we try to, you know, get photos, get videos, talk to people afterwards and get their impressions and try and share that out as much as we can. I need to do better at that. I'm a one-person marketing team. And so like getting the events scheduled and off the ground, and then, you know, making sure that we grab some photo and video from there feels like the editing and distribution is like another full-time job. So I'm
Yes.
trying to do as much of that as I can. Um, and and hopefully as we get going more, be able to pull in some more resources to help me with that part of it, which we're already starting to do, which is great. But yeah,
I,
that was a really long-winded answer to your question.
no, it's great. It's a great answer. And it also makes me think of a lesson that I've really learned kind of the hard way through events too, because it's like these, they're a snapshot in time, you know, it's not like you're recording it and necessarily. The only way you can record it is those pictures, you know, or, you know, talking to people and having conversations in the moment when you're also running the show in a lot of ways
Right,
and making, you're hosting.
right,
And so I think like what you just said about like, you know, just being a small team, being part of the challenge is one of the things I learned really like very, very hard lesson was last year at the Industrial Marketing Summit, I didn't hire a photographer. I was like, we can handle it.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And I don't know if you guys noticed, there were not a lot of photos of last year's Industrial Marketing Summit. We took some photos. They didn't turn out the way I wanted. They were all very dark. They required heavy editing. And I was like, wow, I didn't respect like what it would take to actually do that. And this year we hired a photographer. We already have highlights coming out. It's like all of it has just become easier for like that little bit of investment to bring like somebody in to help. And you don't necessarily need a photographer or, you know, somebody else like a videographer for every single um, event, but those
right.
really like high value ones where, you know, you just can maybe pick and choose and maybe you have somebody else come in for like that moment to help
Yeah,
out would be
Yeah.
huge.
yes, for sure. For sure. And we actually have a great videographer and photographer that we work with. And you know, he's great and we get great quality content. And then it's just, you know, getting it edited and distributed and that's the next piece of it because we are finally amassing a good amount of content that we can deploy and I need to leverage that better.
And
Couple things. Oh,
I
sorry,
was
Peyton,
going to
go on.
say, we've had a couple questions in the chat about like ROI and kind of like how you're measuring success. And I know that's part of the conversation we want to talk about today.
Hmm.
So I was going to kind of shift us there. You know, we've talked a lot about how this is a brand play, this is trust building, but it also makes a lot of business sense for y'all based on the scale. So, like, how are you guys thinking about how can you measure this as successful? And how are you guys thinking about the fact that this is working or it's not working for you?
Yeah. So, the great thing about this is that because of the teamwork and the collaboration and the great partners that we have in there, um, keeping the lab going and keeping events happening in the lab is very, very low cost for us. So whenever, in keeping with that whole $0 zone, even the events that we have, like we recently had New Hampshire Manufacturing Association come in and do a full day root cause analysis training. They usually charge $475 a head for that. They did it here for free in keeping with our $0 zone policy. So it's great. And we've been able to partner with them. They're going to be doing a lunch and learn per quarter and one full training per year at no cost. So it's great exposure for them across the state from where they typically reside. And it's great education for the manufacturers in our area. So since we're not paying speakers to come in, we're not paying, people like CCSA, like I mentioned before, came in and did a fantastic full day of very technical training, and they didn't charge for it. I don't think they typically charge for it when they do those trainings anywhere. No money really exchanged between us for that. We typically provide a catered lunch if it's going to be a full day program and snacks if it's going to be shorter. That's really at this point, since now that we have our lab fully uh, outfitted, at this point, our biggest expense is boosting LinkedIn ads when we have an event coming and paying for the catering when the event happens. So when you talk about ROI, the I is very, very small. And so any return is huge. And we've had several people come through the lab. And I think now we've had every single partner in the lab tell us that they have had viable leads come out of an event that they have held there. We've had viable leads come out of events that we've held there. And considering what we're continuing to put into the lab and considering the size of our typical projects, if we get one project where the person says, I decided to work with you because of an event I attended at the lab that introduced me to you, it's paid for itself. And so we're already, I believe we are already there. I think we actually do have a PO from somebody that we met through the lab. I might have to have Kelly fact check me on that, but
Speaking of Kelly, what's her job title? We had that question in the chat.
she is the director of business development, and she also is a one-person department, and she crushes it.
Thank
In
you.
her role, is she like, so she's, that sounds like a sales position. Is it kind of
Mhm.
like inside sales out? Like, what is she?
So because we don't really have a product line that we're selling, we don't really have a sales team, but Kelly is the first person that anybody who reaches out to us is going to talk to. So when somebody fills out an inquiry form on our website, it goes straight to Kelly, and they hear from her that same day or the next day at the latest. And she sets up those initial calls and conversations, and she would be the one who would work out the URS, go through the URS with them, and sit down with the customers and with Peter and work out their quotes. When quotes go out, they're coming from Kelly, so she's kind of a badass. I mean, she just does it all. She really pulls all the information together, and then she is the continued touch point with those customers up until the point that it gets turned over to the project manager and we start building.
That's great. Well, I know we're getting close to the end of our time. Would love just to ask you, as you've been going through this process, what was like what were the biggest surprises for you when you guys were creating this lab and as you've put it into action?
One of the things that really surprised me was how excited our potential customers and our partners in the lab are about the fact that we also have this space available for college and high school students in our area. So Keene State College is right down the road, and we have the Cheshire Career Center at our local high school. And those students or teachers are able to come in and use these resources as well. And I've had a couple of our partner companies representatives hand me a stack of cards and say, any of the seniors from Keene State who come in here, give them my card. So it's a great way for them to be in the same trainings, be at the same events, and be talking about the same things. It's a great introduction to our local manufacturing community for these students who tend to get their degrees and go away because they don't think there's work for them here. And it gives our local companies the opportunity to meet these students and really get to see what they're about, because, if they sit through the same technical lighting training all day, they're getting a pretty good sense of how sharp that kid is. And they know, it was one of my greatest pleasures has been the ability to write recommendations for some of those students for internships and summer jobs. So
That's awesome.
that's been the biggest surprise for me, is how much it would bring those two communities together.
Yeah, and like personal joy to yourself. I think that's
Mhm.
really cool.
Sure.
And just the team there at Lehnen. I know we're at time, but I have two more questions if you don't mind.
I don't.
What would you what's coming next for the Lehnen Lab? Like obviously you want it to grow. You've got this footprint in the Northeast. What do you
Mhm.
see on the horizon for you guys?
I would love to get, maybe one or two more partner companies in there. So if anybody has components that they're selling to automation manufacturing, hit me up. We'll talk. But I think that what I would love to see happen, and what is starting to happen now, is that every every event that we have kind of builds momentum towards the next event. And so where we started with demonstrations of technology and very technical trainings, now we have a LinkedIn mastery session coming up specifically designed for sales and marketing in industrial. We have the Bureau of Economic Affairs is coming in and doing a session with the Small Business Development Association on how to become an international exporter, what resources are available for companies here, how you can win international government contracts, that sort of thing. And then we also have, we have a Keyence is coming in to do a demonstration of their new line of control systems. And we have a leadership expert coming in to do a lunch and learn with the New Hampshire Manufacturing Association. And so we have, what I'm really enjoying right now is that our events and our content there is starting to hit all of the levels within the companies that we really want to work with. So we have the technical stuff for the engineers, we have the leadership stuff for management, and we have the sales and marketing help, all tailored and relevant to our ideal customers. Because at some point, we would love your marketing department to co-market with us. We would love your engineers to want to work with us. And we would love for your C-suite to be aware of us, because they took a leadership, course here, or, anybody who might be on that buying committee, we want
Yeah,
them to know our name before those engineers and project managers come in and say, hey, here's Lehnen. We don't want to be an unknown entity at that point.
for sure. It's relationship building through every single layer of every single stakeholder that you have at the
Yes.
table. That's really cool. Super cool. Okay, my last question is just any tales of caution that like so if someone's trying to jump in and create something like this, a community like this, a physical space, any warnings, words from the wise?
Yeah, I would say first, just make sure that whatever you're doing, you're keeping value for your potential customers at the heart of it. It's really, really tempting to say, well, maybe we should charge for this one. You
Mm,
gotta set out your core values and the things that you are trying to accomplish in that space, and do not veer from them unless experience tells you that it was a false goal. Um, we really have been trying to make sure that everything we do there is serving our community in some way. So my biggest advice, I guess, not word of caution, would be just make sure that before you start, you have a pretty good idea of what your community needs and can use. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be 100% right. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't start until you have every little detail figured out, because you will learn through the experience, which ways to go and which ways to, which things to steer away from. But really just keep that value and service at the heart of it in something like this.
so great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Julie. I really, really love this conversation and every angle that we hit. Any last thoughts before we go? I mean, I'm sure there's folks in this call. I know I've seen in the chat folks that want to follow up with you. Um, how can they follow up, and anything else you want to say before we wrap?
Yeah, I will say I'm pretty confident that I'm the only Julie Runez on LinkedIn, so you can find me there pretty easily. Our website is lehnendesign.com, Lehnen design.com. And you can reach me through there. And my email address is just julie@lehnendesign.com. I would love to continue the conversation with anybody who's interested, because I could talk about this stuff all day.
Yeah, me too. It's so cool. It's awesome what you guys have put together in really a pretty short time frame. I feel like this has just been the last
Mhm.
like what, 2-ish years. Um,
It was a year in October, so we're about at a year and a half. Yeah.
from like idea to just full on it's happening, events are going. That's so awesome. Um, well, everyone, our next IMC Live is going to be on April 2nd, and Alan is going to be hosting the show. Alan, what do you have in store for folks?
Well, we are going to be joined by our buddy Nihal, and we're going to be talking about customer interview insights and ways that that is changing with the advancement of AI and other insights. So if you are big into customer interviews, please come and join us.
Hopefully everyone's big into the voice of customer in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, that'll be a great conversation on April 2nd. Um, Everybody else, if you want to keep the conversation going with Julie or with everyone in this space, we always invite you to join us in the Industrial Marketing Collective, just industrialmarketingcollective.com, and request your access if you don't have that yet. It's a free space where we just chat all the time. And for the folks who joined us in the room today, we loved seeing you. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you next time. And for the folks listening, thank you so much for tuning in. We will talk with you again soon. All right. Bye, everyone.
Good seeing you, Julie.
Thank you, you too.